Today's video is going to be somewhat lengthy, and it will serve as my definitive Fallout New Vegas review. I can honestly see after playing the game now for a little over 35 hours why it has such an incredibly rabid fan base. And that's a really good thing, actually. The game is so immersive and rewarding and ultimately a satisfying experience. I did get my fill of the game, though. I know there's a lot of DLC and there's a lot of mods, and there are so many ways to play this game. But I've done my part. I've played the game. I completed the storyline. I'll get into my particular ending at the end of this video when I talk a little bit about the story elements of this review. So stay tuned for that. And also, I guess a question I'm sure I'm going to see is, why are you doing this now? Well, I finally got an Xbox Series X. It does have that awesome backward compatibility feature, and the game runs at an incredible 60 frames per second. It has the auto HDR, so things do pop significantly better than I think they did before. It's nice, smooth loading times. And honestly, if you really look at kind of the gaming landscape right now, we're in a relative lull for these immersive role-playing games. We have a couple shooters that came out, and then just kind of a stagnant Christmas this year. So this seems like a perfect time to dive right in. I will be putting timestamps in this video's description for all the things I intend to cover: the graphics, the sound, the gameplay, and then wrapping up with the story and my story as well. Let's go ahead and begin first with the graphics. As I said, it is an Xbox Series X enhancement. However, there really was little improvement, in my opinion, from the traditional Fallout formula. If you take a look at pretty much any Fallout game, starting with Fallout 3, I'm not counting 1 and 2. Those were in a different era. Fallout 3 really brought everything to this 3D universe, right? But it seems like it borrows upon that almost too much. Everything looks so similar. And now, and this isn't fair to this game, but really after playing through Fallout 3, Fallout 4, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 76, it's time for something new. And I know this came out on the earlier end of that cycle, but it's something that you'll hear me bring up time and time again, as it looks just very Fallout-y, or it's very similar to a formula. Now, what makes this game so unique is it takes place in the Mojave Desert. And as a result, you have a lot of desert. It's very barren, lots of flat nothing. And I think that hurts this game, because in a lot of places, while the game is densely packed with stuff, it's kind of hard to find. And as a result, the graphics, I think, take a little bit of a hit in this sense that there's not always something bright and shiny and popping. I think the North Star for most players is definitely going to be New Vegas, the city itself, because it is a spectacle to see. And it was very interesting for me, as a longtime Fallout fan, to see what something would look like if it was clean. Typically, Fallout is very dingy and dirty, and you have broken windows and dirty floors and rotten cans of food strewn about. But New Vegas, and some of the areas you get to explore inside New Vegas, are pristine. There's no grossness on the walls, or everything's freshly painted, everything looks clean. That was a different experience, I think, than I was accustomed to. But I think the graphics looked good, and it looked up to the part. In the areas where there's a lot of rubble and destruction, or craters had been blown out of the earth, or husks of old cars or buildings or anything, those look very Fallout-y, but they look okay. I really think the Xbox Series X enhancements do this game a significant justice, though, really because of that frame rate. And I think that's what kept me coming back, was how smooth everything looked, how fluid the world around me moved, and that was something that I really appreciated. On to sound now. I don't have a lot to say about this, and this is really unfortunate. I feel like this game was really dated in the sound design. When you look at games, more present-day games that have a minimalist, post-apocalyptic-esque environment to it, and I'm going to use Dark Souls as a perfect example. Think of how Dark Souls sounds when you're playing it. typically there's not a lot of sound. It's usually just the rustling of the environment around you, whether it be wind or water or chains or whatever is going on, groaning and moaning if you're in some deep, dark dungeon. But it's immersive and it pops when it needs to. Here, this game doesn't really offer that. You get this constant low kind of whistling noise in the background. And if you don't have your Pip-Boy tuned to a radio station, you hear this dark, brooding music that runs on a continuous loop that doesn't really seem to fit well into the world. When I'm out about in the Mojave Desert and things are bright and sunny, not I want to say good because we're still in a post-apocalyptic environment here, but when you're outside in the Mojave Desert and the sun is shining and it's daytime and there's nobody around you, you shouldn't be hearing the same music that you hear when you go into an abandoned building that is full of psychopathic killers or a cave that is full of some mutated monster. They didn't do a good job here. They just basically made a couple soundtracks and they ran them on loop. If you want to use the Pip-Boy, well, you could turn to local radio stations and listen. You're going to hear the same 4 or 5 songs infinitely over. And while the narrator or the DJs or whatever do a decent job of trying to explain what's going on in the world, or hey, did you hear about the courier that did this today, related to the story progress you have, it does loop very, very often and it gets very boring. My advice, listen to the game for an hour or so you at least get a sense of kind of what the music would sound like, and then go find your own music like I did and play it over the game. Use Spotify or Pandora or whatever in the background and find something else to listen to. You'll be better off for it. I think it'll make the journey much more pleasant, and you're not going to miss out much of the story elements that are told through the radio stations. You're definitely not going to miss out if you turn the Pip-Boy completely off because, like I said, the music doesn't match the gameplay anyway, so you might as well listen to something you want to listen to. That's my advice. Take it or leave it. Over on the gameplay front, this is a standard loop of Fallout games where you're going to start with nothing, unless you have the DLC, and then I think you get a handful of goodies to get you going. And you're going to basically be a kleptomaniac. You're going to loot everything you see. Similar to some of the other Fallout games, the repair function in this game, if you find a broken weapon or a weapon that is in low condition, you basically merge it with another weapon of the same type to make it better. So you keep collecting machetes and eventually you'll have the perfect machete. You could obviously use it for a significant amount of damage, or you could sell it for a very hefty price. And this remains very similar to kind of how you build up your economy. You'll also get caps from just finding caps in treasure chests and looting and selling things of value. But typically it's going to be looting, killing things and looting them, taking everything off of them, repairing everything, and then selling it for a fair price. Unfortunately, that does become kind of a grind. You will find some weapon vendors later on in the game that want 8,000 caps for weapons or special types of ammunition that do get incredibly expensive over time. And I think ultimately what ends up happening is you get in this loop of just collecting money, and you'll have 4,000 or 5,000 caps. You'll go to town, you'll buy 1 or 2 guns, and then you got to start all over again. That does get kind of monotonous, but not everything obviously is related to money. There are a lot of other things to do besides just getting rich and buying weapons, obviously playing the game. The VAT system, for example, is the same VAT system you know and love. You press the button, everything essentially stops. You can take your time. It shows you percentages and how much damage you'll do across enemies, targeting enemies in the legs or the arms, or to incapacitate them, versus in the chest or in the head for a potential monstrous amount of damage is very similar. Enemies typically explode into 1,000 gibs when they're shot. There is some cool perks in the game that do spice up the game considerably. Like the Mysterious Stranger, which was bugged for me. I'll talk about that a little bit later too. You'll find other perks like Bloody Mess, the one I just mentioned where people explode, or perks that let you do more damage to males or females. So you'll find little things that kind of spice up the gameplay. But I think most people will play very similar to the way I played. You're going to let your hirelings do most of the heavy lifting for you because they never die. They never run out of ammo. And they're usually much more ruthlessly effective than you. I was playing with Boone and Rex. Now, Boone is a former sniper. He was killing things before I ever even saw an indication on the screen. Rex was running around barking in front of everybody as a dog, and he was doing a phenomenal job of basically being my meat shield. And I stood in the middle. I had a revolver, or sometimes I used a 9mm handgun, and that was pretty much my way to play the game. You will find a gun combination that works for you, and most likely you will not change it throughout the experience. And that has just been, I think, a common, people, I want to try new weapons. I want to try the pulse grenade. I want to try the laser grenade, or the laser mines, or, the bazooka, or the Fat Man atomic launcher. Yes, they're all fun. You're not going to be able to sustain a lot of that type of gameplay because ammo is scarce or expensive. And you're going to be putting and investing so many perks into your particular category that I think by the time you find these other weapons, it's almost too late. That's what I think. But the gameplay is that standard loot, kill, loop. However, the big part of the game, obviously, is the story. And I think that is the biggest part of the gameplay because the story is really what drives this narrative. I have to say that in all the Fallout games I've played, this story was definitely the most satisfying, particularly in the end, because there was a significant amount of cause and effect by all the numerous factions that you're going to uncover in the Mojave Desert. You're going to meet so many different people that have so many conflicting agendas, and it's going to be up to you to kind of figure out what kind of character you want to be. Unfortunately, in my opinion, the game leads significantly too heavy on the New California Republic, known as the NCR. The game makes them out to be the heroes, and too heavily against the Legion. And this is because, and the Legion, by the way, is a group of people who are slavers. They actually take over. They set up this very primitive society where they have slaves doing manual labor for them, and they're ruthless and mean. They kill a lot of people. They rape women and they murder children that are weak. It's bizarre. But you're going to see these almost instantly. You're going to see how good the NCR is, and you're going to see how bad the Legion is within the first 20 minutes of the game. And I think that it kind of drives the narrative for most people to play NCR. Now, there are other factions as well. There are other factions to assist. As I said, each of them have their own motivations and their backstories. The Brotherhood of Steel makes an appearance in this game. There's another group of kind of, I don't want to say caveman-like, but very militaristic, men are power, the Great Khans. There's a more passive group that wants to heal people. There's just different gangs you're going to meet along the way. And as I said, each of them have their own motivations and backstories. I didn't do all of them, as a matter of fact. I really focused on just two, and it was only because they seemed interesting at the time. The other groups that I met, they didn't capture my imagination, and I wasn't interested in what they were doing. As I said, I understand. I said earlier that this game does provide a lot of feedback, and it does give you a lot of great rewards. So I missed out on some really epic weapons and armor and perks and hirelings and all these wonderful things. But the narrative just wasn't there for me. So, like I said, I focused on the Brotherhood of Steel mostly, and on the Kings, which is a street gang that is emulating Elvis Presley. Yes, this is Fallout. Just go with it. As I said, there's they all have their own kind of rules, and they have their own little society chunks, and they all feed into the greater narrative at some point. Most of these quests. Most of these gangs and these groups and these organizations, though, are really just hooks to get you into these various quest lines that run throughout the world. I call them stub quests, where it'll say, hey, go check out some area and bring me back some doodad, or go do recon in this area, or go talk to so-and-so there. And all it's really doing is forcing you to get out of your comfort zone in the world and go to these parts of the map that you may not explore on your own. And you'll find, if you do decide to play with a lot of these groups over time, you will find, unfortunately, you're going to the same places over and over and over again for different groups. One group might want you to go to find some doodad in the treasure chest. One group may want you to kill all the enemies. One group may want you to find some piece of paper or something. You just never know, right? Unfortunately, though, it does get a little samey. But I think the real problem is, and I didn't mind the quest pacing, it really was that the game forces you to decide very early what you're going to do. See, they have a reputation system in this game, and this reputation system is a little baffling. There are way too many ways to piss off other groups. The clothing you wear, if you're wearing certain armor, you'll instantly be hostile against other groups. Choices you make in one area, even the hirelings you have, can directly and negatively impact groups you're going to meet. I can't tell you the number of times I went into an area instantly hostile with them because I was wearing the wrong armor, or because my hireling was from this group, or because I had done something positive for their enemy, not knowing it. Now, the game does kind of try to self-correct itself. Early on, there is a mission in which you get this, essentially it's a mulligan. Everybody is forgiving you, and then you can kind of repick where you want to go. But even then, it just doesn't really feel very... It doesn't feel very organic the way it works out. I will say this, though. Maximum speech, the perk maximum to get speech and just keep adding speech to get to 100, absolutely ruins the game. And I mean ruins it. You will be able to talk your way out of, I'd say, 80% of the situations. I can't tell you the number of quests that clearly wanted me to either get into a fight or to have to take some sort of stub quest in order to, like, I'll stop attacking you, but you got to do a favor for me kind of thing. I can't tell you the number of times I talked to somebody and flat out I had a speech check. Sometimes they were high. Actually, at the very end of the game, they were 100 speech check, which is maxed out speech. And I totally bypassed large portions of the game because I just was able to talk to somebody and like, hey, I don't want to do that. And they're like, okay. And it's a speech check passed. And then you move on to the next objective. It broke the game. I kind of thought it would. I wanted to try it, and it absolutely did. So if you want it to be a little bit more immersive and not be the con man and get through every situation perfectly, do not max out your speech. As I said, there's a lot to do here as well. You have the hirelings that have story arcs. Mine never triggered. Apparently how this works is you're going to have to do things with your hireling, and supposedly over time they trust you. I looked online because this never happened for me after the game was over. I looked on the wiki because I didn't understand it. Apparently each hireling has very specific things they want you to do. Kill very named NPCs. Go visit this place and talk to this person. Pick up this piece of gear. Something like that, right? And then you earn these uncounted, these like magical points. And after you get like 5 or 10 points, that's when you enable these deeper missions with your companions. I thought I played a pretty good chunk of the game. I thought I sided very heavily with what my companions' beliefs were. Not because I wanted to do it for them. That was just the way I played. Never once did I get this. If you want to be a completionist in this game, you're going to have to rely on the wiki a bit too much. And I think that hurts the game in a sense because there's a lot of hidden systems in play here that you will never, ever figure out on your own. Thankfully, the wiki is very well written, but it's going to lead to probably a pretty significant amount of spoilers, and it may take away some of that organic discovery. I think the faction system overall in this game was a cool idea, but ultimately one that just didn't have enough... It wasn't robust enough, I think, and the way it was designed, it really did force you to pick one group early on, and I think that hurts the game a little bit. But the story, like I said, the story is still good. It's driven at a decent pace, and you will instantly see why I talk about replayability in this game, because you are going to instantly tick people off. I can't tell you how many times I was personally disheartened by seeing multiple quests being failed after a single decision I made with a faction, offending people I had never even met, failing things I had never even seen, because the game is, forcing you down that road. And I get it. You can't be all things to all people, but they took it a little extreme here. And if you really want to play down one specific route, follow the guide, because that's even going to be a challenge to do. However, the ending is definitely one of the most satisfying endings I've seen. You're going to be able to, at the end, you're going to find out every single group or people that you helped. They will, in their own words, tell you what you did for them, how it impacted their lives, and if they're better or worse for it. It was very rewarding that people I had barely met were talking about me, saying, hey, this guy, I heard the legend of this courier. Unfortunately, he didn't interact with me very much, so I don't have much to say to him. Or hey, the courier liberated our city and we prospered, or he vanquished our enemies, or he put us in a weakened state and we ultimately had to give up the dream that we had. It was very cool, and I felt really more so than any other game like I was the center of the universe. And that's exactly what an RPG should make you feel like. All these decisions I made along the way, all the people that I had met, all the quests I accepted and rejected, the way I handled them, it all tied into a final narrative, and it was so satisfying. However, I can't not talk about some of the major issues with this game. The first one right there, the Brotherhood of Steel. I just told you guys I did the entire Brotherhood of Mission Steel. I became an honorary paladin, which is what they call their troops. And guess what? They were never talked about in my ending. They were skipped over. That was one of many bugs that I encountered in this game. It's a Bethesda game. I know Obsidian wrote it, whatever. It's Bethesda's tool set. I can't tell you the number of times I had instant hostility in walking into areas. I would talk to a quest giver. They would accept, I would be talking with them, normal dialogue, and then instantly the entire town would go hostile on me, and I had to reload my game. Sometimes I had to take clothes on and off, even though I wasn't wearing faction-specific clothes at this point. Sometimes I had to dismiss my hireling and have him wait outside down the street just because I couldn't figure out any other reason why people would be attacking me on site. Now, these are these typical Bethesda bugs, but because of the way that this system works, it overlays all of these different factions and everything, and it does become a very complex simulation, and for whatever reason, it breaks pretty often. But I had other things happen too. Doors wouldn't open. I fell through the world. Triggers wouldn't hit. And I was supposed to talk to a specific character that would either never appear or never give me the dialogue option to proceed. I bought a perk called the Mysterious Stranger, which is supposed to be this hooded. Well, you know, he's hooded. I guess now he wears like a top hat, right? He's supposed to appear, and he's supposed to help you kill enemies if you can't kill them on your own randomly. I saw him appear exactly twice. I had max luck. I bought the perk Misfortune. She never once appeared. The Xbox emulation crashed a few times. The actual whole game would bug out. I'd hear this loud pitching, squealing noise. It would crash back to the dashboard. The game would soft lock. It's not perfect. It really isn't. But I still had fun with it. I just wanted to point those things out. For my particular ending, I decided to go with the Yes Man. Essentially, after working with all of these other factions, you learn that there is yet an alternative way to solve the crisis. And I went down that route, and as a result, I got to extract a lot of revenge on NPCs that had made my life absolutely miserable. And it was incredibly satisfying because I knew I had a different route. I wasn't going to side with other groups. I was siding with myself. And after all the bugs and all the crashing and all the broken things that occurred in the game, boy, was it nice to just say, screw it, pull out my biggest, strongest chain gun, put on my power armor, and just lay waste to all those who opposed me. And it was a good send-off for me personally, and it was kind of like one of those things that, like, I'm burning it, you know? Like, I burned the game down as I beat it, and I don't regret playing that way, and it was very rewarding for me. The one last thing I want to mention before I close out this review. This game is great, but it's very dated in its design. Keep that in mind as you play through it, because there are a lot of frustrating traversal areas. There's a lot of hidden walls, ankle-high cliffs that you can't scale, and locked doors that are behind either lock picking or hacking a computer using the science perk that you're not going to be able to get through unless you put in specific statistics. There will be random keys and items that you need to find that are really scattered throughout the world, especially if you gib somebody and the whole room explodes and everything goes flying in the air. Good luck trying to find a key in a pile of junk. And I don't just mean like the person you exploded, but like tables will be littered with a lot of random stuff. I want to close out with that, and I don't want to say that it's negative experience for me, because I really did enjoy it. But it really was a chore, and this game is incredibly dated. It should be. It's an old game. But I don't think it held up well based on today's standards of what we would expect. I would love if somebody could take this game's story and this universe and port it to a more modern engine that gave us more dynamic impacts to the world. That obviously was a little bit prettier, but whatever. But that really kind of modernized the experience, because I don't think it holds up well. I think you have to go into this game understanding there's going to be a lot wrong with it. You have to go into this game understanding that you're going to have to rely on the wiki to get through things. Now, people who've played this game 3,000 times and lived this every day, they understand it. But for a new player, and I'm not new to Fallout and I'm not new to video games, but from a new player's perspective, there was a lot of stuff I missed, and there was a lot of stuff that was broken for me because I didn't understand, or quest lines that were locked out for me because I didn't understand why they were locked out. So if you want that full definitive experience, you almost have to do your homework before you start. And I think that's what makes the entry level into this game so high. So I can't recommend it for everybody. But if you're jonesing for a deep RPG, one that's really going to leave your jaw dropped at the end of the story, depending on your story, and you're going to really get to see the impact you have on the world, I do recommend it. And I think all the other things I said, good and bad, ultimately will play into a overall positive experience for you. So I think I'm going to close out this video there. I told you it was going to be a long one, and it was a long one. I hope you guys found this definitive review of Fallout New Vegas interesting. I'm looking forward to the next Fallout. I think we're going to have to wait like another 8 years. I don't know. I know we got Starfield coming up. We got ESO. Well, not ESO. Elder Scrolls 6. And then I think Fallout's coming. So it's going to be a while. So there may be a chance that I go back and play this game again and decide to run with the Legion, or decide to try something else. This game would be the place to do it because, like I said, there's so many different ways to play it. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care of yourselves. And until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.